back to my channel. I'm going to be talking about the obvious reason why the Chinese are in Africa. Now, some of you may have already thought about this or even drawn your own conclusion as to why they're there, okay? And some of us may have the same thoughts on that. But the obvious reason to me is the fact that China is overpopulated. If you look at some of the images of China and how their homing structures are and their buildings, everything is just piled one on top of the other. And so they were like, we got to do something about this. One thing that they attempted to do was limit the number of children a woman could, or a family could have. And so they would basically, there was this little thing where they would kill off their girls. If they had a girl and they really wanted a boy, they would do things, right? I'm not going to be talking about that, but I'm trying to paint a picture to you. If I remember, I will show some images of what life is like in China, how the houses and the buildings are just crunched together. Overpopulated. Overpopulated. And so they got together with their thoughts and they said, how can we deal with this problem of overpopulation in China? And their solution was the obvious solution. They came up with this solution not because they love Africans, but because they love Africa and what it has to offer. Now, what does Africa have to offer? Land and resources, and a very, very pliable population. Okay. Now, that's not all, because there are a lot of people on the continent of Africa that do not like what is happening with their leadership and how their people kowtow to other nations. And so, but those are the voices that are just kind of silent and behind the scenes. But you have others, on the other hand, who just, they don't mind these other nations being in there. As a matter of fact, they want to look like them. They are actually in bed with them, politically and literally, okay? Politically, so you have all of these, like the AU and other organizations and the African leaders who are basically dealing with these world leaders on a way that is unfair to their population, but it provides a good life for them and their family, right? And so with the Chinese, they go over there because they need a place to expand, because they are just outgrowing their space. Chinese people live a lot longer than many people on the planet, okay? So they don't die as fast. For the most part, many of them are healthier. They're very smart people, just a number of different things going on with the Chinese. And so they are growing in population, literally bursting at the seams. And so Africa is the place to go. They don't want to come here to the U.S. because it would be a fight on their hands. They're not trying to go to other areas. They're going to where the resources are and where the population is pliable. Now, the Chinese have their little strongholds in every region just about, but not like they're trying to set up in Africa. In Africa, they're building infrastructure, airports. They're controlling in certain areas. They're mistreating the people. I mean, even in South Africa, they put police stations there. This is a person or a group of people saying, look, we're here to stay. Now, I want to talk, maybe I'll talk about this in another video, but the fact that the African leaders are even allowing this shows us that that is definitely not the place for us to try to run back to. Why would we want to go and be under Chinese, white, and Indian rulership? Although I haven't heard as much about the people of India taking over as much. If they've started, trust me, they're probably going to try to pick up the pace too. But it's really sad that when you have a continent of people with more than 50 countries in Africa, that these African leaders don't have enough strength to come together and keep the West out and keep these other nations out. They don't have enough strength to come together. You have to ask yourself, what is that and what is the thinking behind it? Okay? What is the thinking behind that? But yet there is this rush to go to Africa. To be under what? Chinese rule? These people hate us too. As you saw the recent video where the Chinese guy was calling the black guy a monkey and all of this, that, and the other, trying to say that we're close relatives to the monkey. just being very insulting and disrespectful, had no regard to what this man felt like afterward. It doesn't matter that they sent him packing. That doesn't matter. The fact that they are there in mass. But let me tell you another aspect of it that just really bothers me, okay? It bothers me that these Chinese males are doing the same thing that the European males did. They have decided, now they're doing it a little different, okay? It's the same, but it's different. They're mixing their seed. Now the difference is the white man did it by force and rape, okay? Now with the Asians, they're going over there, they're saying, oh, let's marry these African women. Let's make them our wives. And so when they have our children, our offspring gives us a permanent stronghold on the continent. And so, very strategic thinking. These people know, and they think ahead, they plan ahead, because they know that they are dealing with a docile, for the most part, a docile population, to where they are going to be worshipped, literally. You have people of other nations who can go to Africa, such as the Chinese and the Europeans and people of India, anybody other than black folk, right? Any other nation, Gentile nation, can go into Africa, and they are going to be treated different and much better than the Africans would treat their own people. People of skin, people of color. We can go to Africa and we're going to be dealt with quite differently than what the Chinese and the people of India and the people of Europe are going to experience. We're going to get a total different experience. And so these Chinese people, knowing this and knowing that they have deep pockets, they are actually lending even to the United States of America. So they have deep pockets right now. They are using that to their advantage. They are buying the continent. Now the continent should not be for sale, but apparently it is for the right amount of money. So what we are looking at is a recolonization or a retakeover of Africa, and it's being done willingly. Now you have some that seem to be pushing back, but then not so much, because when it's all said and done, for some reason, greed and power always wins. These people always seem to get what they want because they will affect the right person with the right thought process in Africa, on the continent, that is going to adhere to what they want them to adhere to. They're going to do what they want them to do. And it's rather sad to see this happening and see it taking place. And all we can do is talk about it. You see people on the continent talking about it. You see people around the world talking about it. Talking about the Chinese takeover. That's all we're doing, is talking about it. But nothing is being done about it. No one is doing a thing about it. Now, I will say this. It's unfortunate that so-called black people here in America think that we should be able to pull our money together and do just as much as the Chinese are doing, when we don't even have any togetherness and cohesion where we are. We're not going to all of a sudden have that just because we go to the continent, especially when we're going to be faced with so many other obstacles as well. Okay? We're not just going to be faced with the fact that Africans look at us differently than they look at these other nations. We're also going to face these other nations. You think the Chinese going to let some African Americans that they can't stand, that they look down on, come in there and take over what they are trying to establish? Do you think these Europeans are going to do that too? You got another thing coming. If you think it's going to be that easy for you to just take a few $1,000s over there to Africa and take over what these people are doing on a large scale. How are we going to go to Africa and build an airport when I don't know if I know of one African American airport in this country? Now you might have some little small airport that I haven't heard of, but on a large scale, I don't know of one African American airport in this country. Now, roads. How many roads are we putting in cities that we own, cities and towns that we own? How many buildings, or should I say, hotels are we building? Now, some of us may take over a hotel that has already been established. I heard of a church down in Florida, I think it is, where the pastor recently died and his wife is trying to gain control of the hotel that they owned, but how many African Americans actually build hotels? As a matter of fact, how many actually owned a hotel that was already built? When you compare it to the number that are owned by other nations, not a whole lot. Okay, there may be a few here and there, but not a whole lot. So for us to think that we're going to just bounce from here on over to Africa and take over what the Chinese is doing, that kind of borders on delusion. That's just my opinion on it. I know a lot of you don't like those opinions. It is my desire and wish that we could do those things. So when I say these things, don't think that I'm saying them because I don't desire them. But the proof is in the pudding in doing these things. The same with a lot of things that have gone undone on the continent. The continent is so rich in wealth, but is not controlled by the people of the continent. Let that sink in for a minute. The Chinese, on the other hand, they are setting up many strongholds, building infrastructure, taking over, building police forces, mistreating the people, and planting seeds. They are having babies with the population so that they can be rooted and grounded on the soil of Africa and say, oh, we have a right to be here. My child was born here. So do you all see where I'm going with this? The Chinese existence in Africa today is by design because they sat back and they realized that they can no longer go in the direction they were going in China because they are bursting at the seams with population. They needed to expand themselves, and they looked for a docile population to make it happen, and a poor population that was vast in resources. So again, that is the obvious reason. Tell me what you think in the comment section. Be sure to ring the bell to be notified of new uploads on this channel, and also comment, share, like, and subscribe.